Well, Adam, such a pleasure to have you here on the Social Entrepreneurship and Innovation podcast. For folks who
Uh,
are unfamiliar, would you mind introducing yourself and sharing with us a little bit as to what it is that you do?
yeah, so appreciate you having me first and foremost. So thank you. And I'm co-founder of Change Creator and co-creator of the Captivate Method. So we're all about helping entrepreneurs solve their problems and get their big ideas out to the world. So that's where Change Creator was born. We have the first magazine in the App Store for social entrepreneurs. We've had some great interviews over the years with people like Richard Branson and Tony Robbins and all those guys. And the Captivate Method takes us a step further from that media platform. It's one of our products that kind of goes deep to give people the support they need to power up their marketing with storytelling and really start getting these consistent sales with an online system that they put together. So that's been a big part of where our heads have been right now.
Excellent. And so I'd love to, of course, dive into where we are now, but first maybe take a step back as to Change Creator and its inception. I know
Of
you have
course.
a bit of an interesting story there, something of maybe an existential crisis, which might be common for entrepreneurs as they transition from one thing to the next. But I'd love to hear a little bit as to the origin of Change Creator and how it got started.
Sure. So this is a bit of a pain story that I'm sure a lot of people can relate to. Working in the cities, worked in New York City, and then I met my wife, and she was in the city, and she was a resident in medical school at the time. We moved over to Philadelphia, and I was traveling back and forth from Philly to New York, and kind of doing that,
Hmm.
every day. And over time, we felt this feeling of burnout, and we're like, let's just escape the chaos here, high paced hustle life. And we're like, I want to do a different vacation than we normally do. We're like, let's go remote. And I want like nothing, no devices, no nothing. So we kind of did something different. We went out to Costa Rica. And, I was actually, at the time, I always had this entrepreneurial spirit, but like, I don't know about anybody listening here, but maybe you've have feelings of discontent,
Mm.
kind of feeling like you're doing stuff, but you don't feel like it's the right stuff, right? So while out in Costa Rica, it just kind of, the environment led me to have the opportunity to kind of feel a little more connected to the world around me
Mm.
versus just going through this routine where I'm working, trying to get stuff done, trying to get home, take a break, whatever it might be, have a beer and, have a pity party at night and feel like I wish I was doing something else.
Mm.
So I'm sitting out there literally, and I have pictures of this, and it's like I'm in this almond cove in Costa Rica, and there's nothing out there. And it was my first time. So for me, I felt like I was in a whole other planet. As I sat there, there was a key question that kind of came to mind that really triggered it for me. So it was the combination of just how everything felt and being so distant from the civilized world we came from. And, I was sitting there going, in 10 years, am I still going to be director of strategic marketing at WebMD? Like, in other words, not just that role, but am I going to be doing this kind of work, like going to the office, going to clients and trying to sell like big deals and stuff like that, and just trying to work my way up that corporate ladder. Like, what's next? Trying to be VP? Do I really want to be a VP? Do I want that responsibility? Do I want to go to quarterly meetings with the CEO and the president? Like, that stuff is just, it's brutal. And I've had my fair share and my taste of those things. But when I thought about that, I was just like, no way. Like, I've got to figure out how to change things, because you automatically, when you're out there, you're like, I wish I could stay out here. Why can't I slow my life down and be out here doing these things? And so I had these like skills of digital marketing. I was creating, like, I was a guy at WebMD creating multi-million-dollar marketing strategies for, it might have been Walgreens, Walmart, Target, Pfizer, whatever it might have been. Even Microsoft, we did a big deal for. So I worked with all these guys, and I had these skill sets in the digital marketing space. This is where I was there for over 10 years. And then 5 years before that, I was still in digital marketing. So this is all I've done and learned from a lot of really great minds. I mean, don't get me wrong, WebMD's a great company, great people, learned a lot. But, when you're feeling like out of place, like you want to find your own truth and do what you want to do. So
Mm.
immediately after that, it just became all hands on deck. I had no idea what I wanted to do. So it led to probably about a year of starting businesses and failing, finding that I don't like them, because a lot of people get stuck with decision paralysis, where
Mm.
it's like, well, I'd like to get into the rainforest protection space. I'd like to get into plastic pollution, where I came up with this like hemp water bottle and all these other things. And I'm talking to manufacturing companies and all this stuff and trying to figure out how to do this thing. I spoke to MIT about a solution to stop water absorption in the bottle, so like, it's just, and I was waking up at 3 and 4 a.m. To do this like research and figure this out, because I had to get on a train by 7:23 and get back to New York for work. Right. So I was committed, to say the least. And, finally I, was listening to certain podcasts and all these other things. And I was always on the train taking notes. I still have my original notebook that I filled up. And I got back to my roots of like, dude, you're a digital marketer. Like, hello, like, why not do like the magazine, the media company, and all these things? And that is where Change Creator was born, because it gave me the fastest track to lean into what I already have and do something that was important to me. Because I hate businesses that are just profit first, hungry, chewing up the planet kind of stuff. It really pisses me off. So for me, this was an opportunity to say, let's change the game. Let's redefine what good business is all about. And let's put on the cover of a magazine people that actually are doing these things that never make it onto Forbes or, Inc. and all that stuff. So that is what Change Creator really is all about. And it was designed to be a media company that is addressing and highlighting that stuff.
And I think it's such an interesting thing, this space of like navigating that kind of like seeking and sorting through purpose and like what it is that you want to do, that transition. It's interesting. It seems like we have similar paths in a way, like me as well in the digital marketing space. I don't think I've been on the scale that it sounds that you were at WebMD, but a lot of sorting, questioning ways in which business can be done. But that crisis that I felt I went through myself to kind of navigate from where I felt so lost to finding a sense of greater purpose in the work that I did. I think there were definitely some characteristics or activities that made me feel a little bit more on pace with actually growing and progressing through that despair. And so I'm interested in what maybe for you in kind of breaking it down, what do you think were some elements? You already mentioned things, the trip to Costa Rica, maybe the podcast you were consuming, the actions you were taking, but maybe just to kind of break it down a bit further, what do you think are some key elements or key activities that can help someone in that same position navigate through that like bridge from one thing to another?
It's a good question. And, my answer has evolved over the years, getting to the same kind of conclusion. But, for me, it was it's once you finally make the acknowledgement that something is not right and you agree with yourself that you're willing to go down a path to change it. Because a lot of people will look down the barrel of that path and say, yeah, right. Like that's way, like, it's just not even an idea they can entertain because it's too much, it's too difficult. And they're afraid. So they're not willing to do what it takes. But once you make the decision and you take your first step, it's like the snowball concept, right? It's like you start just going and like now you're on the path. So at least when you're on the path, you can actually get to a destination. So you start taking shape this idea and it gets more and more clarity as time goes, because now you're doing things and you're crossing things off your list and you're at least trying to figure it out. Trigger really is the pain motivator, which is when the pain of not doing something to change it comes greater than the pain of actually doing it. So for me, the pain, I acknowledged it. I always had that feeling, that sense, which reduces your happiness in life. So I was a happy guy, having a good life, married, all these things, but that discontent, it builds stress, right? From the external stimulus of around the world, your work, your everything. And you're kind of like operating from a very conscious mindset, which is everything you were told to do in your life, right? You got to do this, you got to do that, you got to get a job, got to go to Harvard, you got to do all these things. And you're living based on that operation of that conscious thinking. Whereas your subconscious, let's call that like your younger inner self of who you really, really are and who you are supposed to be. Over the years, you grow more and more disconnected from that. And you're not operating as much from there. Like your subconscious has old habits that like direct you to do like things that probably don't serve you, or they do serve you. But as you grow more disconnected, it's so my long story short here is that you're kind of realigning those two worlds, the inner and the outer, right? And so for me, it was, I needed enough frustration where we went on this trip, and it gave me an environment that was allowing me to acknowledge these things about myself and ask those deeper questions. So I got in my head more. So I
Mm,
got in touch with like, hey, it's like meditating.
mm,
That's a way. It's like going to a hypnotist. The more you listen to what's on the inside and actually let it guide you, you're going to get more alignment, and then it'll lead you to these types of decisions versus just gotta have my job, gotta put food on the table, gotta do these things. That's not listening to your right. So it was really just, and everyone's different. Once you actually make the decision, it's kind of like looking at your skills, looking at what you're good at, looking at what you like, looking at what your values are. I've made so many lists, and I'm cross matching and circling things to find
mm,
like, where should I put my time, right? Like what makes sense. And you can be really skilled at something, but it doesn't mean you enjoy doing it. You may enjoy something, but doesn't mean that you're going to be skilled at it, right? So you got to
mm,
find that balance, but then align it to who you are and your values as a person. Obviously, we want to wake up and we want to be happy with what we're doing. We don't want to just get through the day, right?
mm,
So I think it's different for everybody, but it's about getting to that point where the pain of not making a change is greater. Some people feel the pain and they don't know it's because they're discontent. They're just, man, this sucks, but this is how it is, right?
mm,
And they need like something to snap them out of that. So there's triggers that can hit you. You could be watching a movie and have a perspective shift that's like, oh man, I'm inspired. And you start thinking about yourself differently. Or, you go on a trip. Usually, I would say at least 80% of the people we've done, I don't know, 200 or something podcasts at this point, and I speak to all these people just kind of like you're doing now, and it's a goddamn travel experience that triggers
mm,
their life shift. Maggie Doyne, Crystal Urch, all social enterprises, incredible businesses. The travel experience is what triggered it, because I think it's like puts you in touch with something that resonates with you that you can't get just sitting at your house. So I would say get out there, travel, go to different parts of the world, see what's going on, find the inspiration.
mm. I think that's really sound advice. I mean, in reflecting on my own experience as well, being in the normal kind of day-to-day routine, it's easy to not even feel that pain that you're talking about, but more so numbness, and that you can't really have that attentiveness to touch on those, like the deeper things that you're talking about revealing, as well as just that immediate pain of
Yeah.
discomfort or discontentment. And so that sort of environmental like trigger, just to kind of get yourself out of that normal state and normal routine.
Sleepwalking.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's same for me. It was a conference. I went to the Certified B Corporation annual
Mm-hmm.
retreat, volunteered at the conference, which I'd suggest to anybody. Look to volunteer. It's like in
Yep.
niches or industries that you might be interested in. Great way to go to conferences for free. Enjoy most of it the same way. And as
Mm-hmm.
well, you get planted as an organizer. So a lot of people are really generous and open to discussing. So it was the same thing for me though, putting myself in that environment that like triggered, new growth. And I noticed that the whole way through in that sort of experience, that bridge, that I needed to take action before I could kind of gather more information. You know what I mean?
That's exactly
Otherwise
it.
I'd be in that paralysis state over and over
That's
and
what it
over.
is. I think
Uh,
volunteering is great. I mean, once you like make that decision to do something different, you might not know what you want to do. Start
mm,
volunteering, get your feet wet, meet people, connect, like experience different things. And I did the same thing. I did it. I volunteered. I tried all those companies that started, and I was like, nope, not for me. So you just got to go through it, man. But once you at least make the decision to go for it, you're at least on the journey.
mm. Right. And so here we are today, 2020. Change Creators been around since 2016, right?
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
what looks most different about Change Creator today versus when it was that you kicked things off? For sure, everything
A
as is
lot has
common, but
changed. The essence and the ethos, if you will, are the same. And we've kind of shifted a little bit to be less media company oriented, right? So we have the media company, we have the magazine, the podcast, those key cornerstone pieces. But we are putting a lot of attention into the Captivate Method program because this is more hands-on. So think of the magazine. It was our way of extending the key lessons from really great people, whether you're on the front lines and just starting in the first couple of years with success, or you're the, Ariana Huffingtons of the world or Seth Godin's of the world. We're bringing that to them in a very accessible, affordable, have it in your pocket anywhere I go format, right? But that's a certain level of education and learning and inspiration. Same as a podcast. You get inspiration, you get insights, you get those types of things. But now we're saying, okay, we were seeing so many people with challenges writing to us, emailing or whatever it was. And they're like, well, they're getting stuck or their businesses are failing for a number of key reasons, which is what inspired us. And we kind of had this in our business model, but we jumped on it sooner than anticipated and started running beta tests on these ideas around helping people with storytelling. That's where it all started, because people are not necessarily natural. Like, we're all natural storytellers, but it's kind of like saying I'm a kid and I'm going to take this pen and I'm going to draw a doodle. Great. I can draw. Yeah, we can all draw. But if you want to go further than that, you have to start to become excellent and master the craft, right? And so when you have a powerful social enterprise and you're doing something important in the world, the only way to get people on board and to create a movement and to do something special and actually grow the business is to actually tell stories that captivate people, right? And that's what gets them excited about what you do. It actually gets them to take action, join you, AKA become a customer, a client, whatever. You're going to change their life. You're going to make the world better. But if you can't communicate these messages, I don't care how many ads you run. I don't care how many partnerships you have. It won't matter. You can bring 10,000 people to your website every day and you won't be converting sales. So there was a disconnect because these are artisans. They're people who are passionate about what they do and they're great at what they do, but they would say, I'm not a marketer. I'm not a salesperson. And we would say, okay, this is the massive gap. Everyone is going down this road. And then what do? They literally just put up a testimonial from one of our members. They're like, so when I got into the marketing thing, I teach meditation. And he was like, my number one step was to delegate the things I wasn't good at. Because that's what everyone says. Delegate the things that aren't your specialty. Okay. And so they delegate the sales and the marketing and they hire someone $1,500 a month, $2,000 a month, and it goes nowhere. They waste all their money and they crash and they burn. And they go, why aren't I getting sales? And, if you can build something like our program or another business and whatever it might be, if you don't know how as the CEO of your company to get buyers, to find customers, build those relationships and understand what it takes to actually sell, you're never going to win. And no one's going to be as passionate about it as you would be. So you don't want to just hand that off, right? So you need to learn these processes. How do I tell stories? How do I thread that through my digital footprint so that it's effective and smart and actually gets people to spend money and join me and understand? But you can hand that strategy off, but never let someone create that strategy for you.
That's a critical point. And oftentimes, what we want to chat about with clients is what we do is focus on the traffic element, right? And you can throw all this traffic if you don't have a product or an offer that's converting, and with that that underlies it, the strong messaging. We can give you all the traffic in the world, but that's not going to change your business. And so that's a critically important point to think about. What sort of fundamental elements you need within your enterprise before it is that you look to throw more into it. And so I'd love, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I know I said 100%.
Oh, yeah. Well, so I mean, this is the exact substance that I wanted to dive deeper into today with you, this conversation around storytelling. Here at Grow Ensemble, we're focused on the tactics in SEO and digital marketing. And so I was listening to one of y'all's podcasts, Change Creator, and I felt a little bit of shame or guilt or something like that, being like, oh man, I'm an SEO guy. Like, I know these tactics in digital marketing, and I know I need to focus more on storytelling myself. So this is a little bit of a selfish pursuit here in this conversation.
Go for it, man. Yeah.
But even to start by defining it, for these purpose-driven businesses, social enterprises, nonprofits, if they're even asking themselves, like, what is storytelling? Like, where do you begin with the definition in your own words, and how maybe that relates to y'all's
Can I
methodology.
remember my formal definition that I love to use? I haven't said it in a while, but let me just put it in a general terminology to make it very simple. So, because you hear about storytelling and there could be misconceptions. What does that mean though? Is it, oh yeah, I know storytelling. I've seen movies, I've read books, and I can tell a story. Great.
Hmm.
But it is really just all about how we effectively communicate something meaningful to people and get them to clearly understand what we're about and take action.
Mm.
Right. So usually this has a process of creating an emotional response. So we're telling stories in business, and it's different because if you look at a classic story arc, there's many components to it,
Hmm.
and they're important to understand. But when it comes to business, it can be a little bit more abbreviated, right? We're not writing a book. We're not writing a script for a movie. We're doing Facebook Live videos or ad copy or something on the website. So we actually get into two worlds of storytelling behind our scenes when it comes to business, right?
Mm.
And the core story is what we've been talking about today. This is my ethos. This is why I make the decisions I make. It's why I do what I do. It's who I am. And that is threaded through the business as a core story. It informs the business in many ways. It informs our sales stories in many ways. And that's the next piece is sales stories.
Mm.
It's how are we using stories to not just tell people things, but to demonstrate them,
Mm.
because that's what's going to create clarity for people, is when you actually can put it in context. So let me give an example. If I was doing a pitch and it was like $1 million, I can go into a boardroom and start running through my slides. And what people really love is all this data. They want to know the data. What are people at WebMD? We have like, I don't know, it's like 100 million unique visitors a month. And like, I want to know like, what are all the, what do you call it? Cardiologists, like how do they behave on your site? What do they do? How
Mm.
do they click these buttons and all this stuff? And you get all the data and they love that data, but no one ever remembers the data, right? So if I go in the boardroom, I had to actually create a story to wrap the data in. And I
Mm.
can't just be like, here's how this happens. I would say, you know how this will occur and then this whole thing falls apart and then this happens, and they're like, yeah. I'm like, okay, now this happens 30% of the time with kind of, and you wrap
Mm.
it in like stories, right? So you can have a threaded theme of a story, or you can have supporting secondary stories that create these examples and demonstrations. So it's learning how to use, we like to make sure that we're tapping into our own truth, right? This is
Mm.
born out of what we're doing here. We want happiness, we want meaning. And so that core story is a critical part that we evolve, and then understanding how to get those secondary stories, the sales stories and everything else as an art form to facilitate what we're trying to teach or the conversations we have. And it creates clarity. So my long-winded answer to that, but storytelling is a form of communication that conveys meaning, and it actually effectively and clearly gets people to understand what you're trying to do so that they can take action.
Mm. And what might be some warning signs or characteristics that any of these social enterprises might be missing out on this really important element? Like what sort of things might be revealing themselves in their business, their
Yeah.
operations, or their sales, to where they may need to take a deeper look into this?
Yeah. A lot of times you're going to find that, trying to think between like e-commerce versus like a high ticket offer kind of company,
Mm.
different scenarios there. But what you'll commonly see is low conversion rates. If you're a kind of company that's running webinars and things like that, you're going to have people that don't understand what you're offering. So you're not
Mm.
going to get buyers. You're going to do follow-ups. And you're going to find out, well, I wasn't sure if this was right for me, or I wasn't sure how this would work. I wasn't sure if it would actually get me the results. If you're running e-commerce, you're probably going to have people who are confused or not excited. I mean, there's study after study showing that even simple product descriptions that have an element of story behind it will have increased sales rates, right?
Mm.
So low sales rates, confused people, and a confused person never buys. So I think those are key things, is when you start seeing like, oh, I have all this traffic, but no one's buying, right? Or I spoke to people and they seem confused. You're getting all these questions, like people don't get it,
Mm.
So you're going to start seeing confusion or lack of sales or lack of people taking action on what you're doing. Or the classic, I love what you do, but, and they don't work with you. They don't become a client or a customer. It's just, oh,
Mm.
I love what you do, but, right? It's just, you're not capturing them, and they don't see the result clearly that you are offering to them and the world. If they don't see that result, you're not getting a customer. If they don't see how it improves their status, you're not getting a customer, right? So everyone is buying something for a reason, and that is going to be some level of some kind of result that they're looking for. I want to look better. I want to make the world better. I want, more sales in my business, whatever it is. And if you don't convey that clearly, you're going to have a hard time. One last example would be like Jake Orak. He has Ethnotech bags, and he has a great story about how he connected with these natives who do this incredible hand embroidery work. And he was out there in Vietnam. He left like a 6-figure job, went from the States to Vietnam to make $500 a month in an internship, just because he wanted to learn how to design bags, because he was an engineer, but he was doing stupid medical devices and he didn't care about that. And so he was out on a motorcycle ride on holiday, and he met these incredible people in these villages, but they were like losing their craft because of bigger industry. And he came up with this whole idea of using their fabrics and their stuff to actually create bags and whatever else he can come up with and sell them and support their culture, right? But this now is the entire story that his business is wrapped in. And whenever someone buys his bag, we were at SoCap maybe a year or two ago together, and he had a booth. And we were sitting there, and everyone that bought a bag was like, he would say, "Hey man, welcome to the tribe." People were paying twice as much for his bags versus a standard backpack like JanSport or whatever. And they were happy about it. They wanted to be part of this. Crystal Earl, we were talking to her, and she was like, "Adam, people come back to me and they tell my story to me. And they're like, man, I'm so excited to be part of right?" And this is what it's about when it comes to social enterprises. So they are using story to really scale these things up. It makes a big difference.
And so maybe with some of the folks who are a part of your Captivate program, what are some maybe common early mistakes or misconceptions about this skill of storytelling that you see happen again and again?
Misconception is, I know storytelling. And I'm going to say, no, you don't. It's like, goes back to the drawing thing. Yes, I have a can of paint, but I am certainly not Picasso, right? So like, we all need practice. We all need to learn. We have to understand human behavior, all that kind of stuff. The other part is, a common mistake would be even people that get into the program, like 90% of the time, they think that they're targeting the right audience, and they're not. So that's super important for any business in general. But when it comes to storytelling, it's actually a key part of it, because who you are before you started the business typically will be the customer that you're going after, right? And that alignment is so important. So the more clarity you have on yourself, getting in through the cobwebs and all the deep past secrets, it's like you will have a stronger conversation across we call it a digital conversation, that resonates with the audience because of that clarity. So you really need to understand how to talk to a very specific person. We hear this in business all the time. Know your niche, know your target audience, but it goes really deep. Like people don't seem to understand just how that works. And they'll be like, yes, I'm targeting social entrepreneurs. And they think that, I'm like, you're not, no, like you're not there yet. I've had people come to like coaching calls over and over, and they would be like, all right, this is what it is. This is what it is. And I'm just like, man, no, and we literally just updated the program to have a very special section about really identifying your ideal customer, because people were just really struggling with this. And I get it, because we've struggled with it for years too, where we spent tons of money. Like our first year, we spent $30,000 or $40,000, and we had nothing to show for it. So like we've been down those roads. So stuff like that is big. And I think another thing around it would be, I'm on the hamster wheel of just creating tons of content, putting all this stuff out there. I'm typing up articles. I'm going to start a podcast. I'm going to do all these things, which is exciting and fun. There's a lot of people doing the right things at the wrong time, but also they're doing tons of content that is not designed for their ideal customer. So it's like throwing money out in the wind. It just doesn't go anywhere. It's not doing anything, right? And so they're burning themselves out, churning. because everyone tells them work harder, you got to grind, got to hustle. And we always tell people, F that, we want to work less and make more, be smart, create systems. When you're effective, what you do, it's not about 100-hour weeks. It's about doing the right things, So it's stuff like that you're going to see a lot as common. Those are like very, very common mistakes.
And then, so, I don't want to encourage you to give up too much of the secret sauce that's in the Captivate Method program, but what about getting started then? The first exercises, you did mention something there, particularly of truly understanding, yourself and the origin of the business. Where are, do people start? Like, what do you recommend are some first preliminary exercises to begin to craft what would be the story of the brand?
Yeah, I'll steal just an analogy that we use sometimes. Like if you were going to grow a garden of tomatoes, you would probably sit there and say, okay, I'm not just going to go plant them and hope for the best. I'm going to actually find out, well, what do tomatoes respond to? Do they need water? Do they need sun? Do they need fertilizer? What is it that's going to get the most return on my investment into these tomatoes for me? And that means you have to understand the behavior of a tomato. How does a tomato behave? And so same thing when it comes to our marketing and understanding people. We can't just expect to connect with people if we don't truly understand how they work. So the first thing we go through is the evolution of marketing and understanding how the science of storytelling works. And we demonstrate that through a lot of stories and experiments and different things to help people understand, well, what makes this tick and what makes people tick. Right. And that sets you up to understand, because now it's like, all right, now I get it. Now I understand that part. Then we go into really understanding your own unique magic sauce. I mean, we really go deep on this. It's a pretty heavy, we've added to that process. Then we talk about, once you know that, we talk about how to master your connection with your beneficiary, typically your ideal client or customer. But hey, maybe you're going to get an investor. Maybe you want to get a partner for something. This will master that connection. And we call it it's a story bridge. It's a proprietary thing that we put together to help people cross and make that connection from themselves to that beneficiary. Then we clarify the offer. Then we create a sales story toolbox of 14 critical sales stories. Then we set everything up and start threading it through with a framework on the website and the digital footprint, creating like a sales system. And then of course we teach everybody how to measure all that and optimize as you go. So we originally, when we ran the beta, was starting off teaching people just how to become storytellers. It turned into people needing how to thread that through their business. So now it has that full spectrum. But yeah, that first step is all about the behavioral understanding.
Excellent. Well, highly encourage folks to check out the program and whatever resources might they be able to sample before diving into it. But before we tidy up here, Adam, you mind if I ask you a few rapid fire questions?
Whatever you want, man. Fire it up.
All right. So first off, any favorite books that you always come back to, or books that you've recommended recently?
One of my favorite books is actually Secrets of the Millionaire Mind by T. Harv Eker. I really like that book. Another book is Gino Wickman, who I actually just interviewed. That was fun. He wrote the book Traction. I know a lot of entrepreneurs out there trying to figure out how to get that traction. There's some great insights in there I think every entrepreneur should check out. I would just leave it at those two. I love Rich Dad, Poor Dad. That's another great money mindset book. Stuff like that. Those three books I think are very powerful.
Awesome. And any sort of, maybe not today, since you said you've been up since 1 with a crying baby, but any sort of morning routines or daily habits that you feel like you really have to stick to?
Yeah, for me, I try my best to stick to it. It does help. I'm always trying to stay connected, like I said, and listen to my inner self, if you will. And so meditation is important for me, a little bit of exercise. So honestly, just those basic two things. If I can accomplish those in the morning or anytime during the day, I like to do that because it kind of like calibrates me to stay focused and have energy. So yeah, that meditation process is very, very powerful.
And any sort of hobbies or enthusiasms that you pursue outside of your work with Change Creator?
Not, I gotta be honest. I not really. I eat, sleep, and breathe this stuff. And when I'm not doing this, I'm hanging out with my wife. I'm hanging out with my baby now, going out to dinners and things like that. So, it used to be all about, I ran a record label and it was about music and all that kind of stuff. And but now, honestly, I put all of my waking hours into helping entrepreneurs, running this business. Outside of that, it's family and
Mm.
stuffing my face, having beers, and having a good time.
All right. And then lastly, any parting thoughts or piece of advice for the aspiring or active social entrepreneur?
Yeah, I think that you want to be honest with yourself and make sure that you understand how to orient yourself. Like, where are you
Mm.
truly in your life, and where are you working towards, and what are you going away from?
Mhm.
Because your decisions that you make are going to take you in one of those two directions. And if you're not aware of where you're oriented and where you currently stand with things, it's going to be really hard to make decisions that get you where you want to go, because you could be self-sabotaging and not know it.
Mhm. Wow. All right. Excellent advice to end on. We'll make sure everything Change Creator is linked up at the show notes at
Cool,
growensemble.com.
man. Awesome.
Thanks,
Well, that was
Adam.
fun.